let's get into it. We will keep you all posted on the book updates, though, for sure.
For sure. And since we're talking about it, we're talking about our love and passion for hip-hop, like a discussion that went viral. It was on a podcast with Dr. Umar, who seems like the Thanos of all debates, bro. That's how I look at him. Like, it's impossible almost to debate this man, bro.
And he's from here. He's from Philly.
And he's from Philly. On top of that.
Absolutely.
So he was debating a podcast host, believe is the name of Mouse, whatever. And so they were talking about just, has hip-hop benefited black culture, black Americans over, the span of 50-plus years that hip-hop has been thriving. And the discussion, it seemed like it tapered off a bit. It was pretty lengthy, though. But I think the biggest takeaway from Dr. Umar's side was a lot of these billionaires that have flourished in this culture haven't built any institutions or built any culture or community shaping, establishments that have really had any longevity. And the other person was arguing, like, these people do help in other ways because visibility is important. And that can lead to accessibility later on and everything. So how was your thoughts about it, just seeing the whole debate?
So for me seeing it, I got I'm not one of those people who just discredits everything Dr. Umar Johnson says just because of the fact that he does say some crazy stuff. Like, I remember there was a whole thing online about people, like, questioning whether he actually had a doctorate or not. And I'm going to tell everybody, as an academic, you can't really fake having a doctorate for too long. Like, you can look up, our dissertations are public. They're public records. So, like, you can Google people's dissertation to see if they have a doctorate degree or not. Like, it's not really rocket science. So, I never discredit him in that way that other people have. But what I will say is I could not disagree further with the initial comment. He said that hip hop hasn't done anything to benefit black people. I couldn't think that was further from the truth. One, when you speak in absolutes like that, you're likely to be wrong. Hip hop has done nothing, nothing at all. To me, it's just completely false. Like, on every side of the spectrum, whether you're talking about raising awareness of different social issues, which hip-hop has played a major part in showing people what's going on in these different communities and raising awareness to people who may not know about it. That's one big element that hip-hop has contributed to society. Then if you're even talking on the business side, when people think about hip-hop, you're only thinking about rappers.
Right.
Which is one job within hip-hop. Both of us are... Hip-hop is a part of our careers.
Right.
Journalists, a professor who teaches hip-hop courses. There are dancers. There are producers.
Graffiti artists.
Right, graffiti artists. There are writers. There are videographers who all of these people wouldn't exist if hip-hop didn't exist.
Right.
Like, there's an entire industry out here.
An ecosystem based on
one of my friends from Chicago, a couple people I know who are professional dancers. They are hip-hop dancers. That's what they do for a living. They do nothing else other than dance. Like, there is so much that has derived from hip-hop, even on an economic level, as far as that. So, I mean, if you're saying, I think what he means is the music business hasn't done anything for black people. And if that's your argument, as far as record labels and us not controlling hip-hop monetarily as black people in America, then I agree. Now, if that's the argument, which I think is what he was really trying to get at, but I think he was also judging hip-hop based on just violent gangster rap music, which is completely unfair for the genre. You know what I mean? That's one sector of the genre. Like, you're just going to ignore all of the conscious rap that has empowered and inspired an entire generation of people and just emphasize the one sector of it. So in that regard, man, I thought it was completely off base. And one other thing that he said that I've heard a lot of people repeat is this notion, and I wrote about this back in 2021. If anybody wants to look up the article, I think it was called hip hop didn't cause poverty, hip hop didn't cause gun violence, poverty, and broken homes did. And I wrote that for Diverse Issues in Higher Ed. And one point that I made in there is that people often use Chicago and some of these cities as the examples of, like, look at what rap music is doing to this city. And I point out in that one, the murder rate peak in Chicago, the peak murder rate in the city of Chicago was in 1980 before gangster rap even exists. So hip-hop didn't cause any of these problems. It put a light and a camera in front of what was happening, but gangs were going on already People were already selling drugs. All of the stuff that was happening was already in motion long before hip hop came around. So to blame hip hop for people wanting to be gangster or people wanting to be, it just doesn't add up. Like research wise or just looking at the numbers, it just doesn't add up. So.
And I think the part for me, the only part that I can agree with from Dr. Umar's stance is that hip hop could do more. Like I don't think anybody would have a sound argument and say that hip hop has done enough. It hasn't done enough in my eyes as far as community shaping. As I said a little bit earlier, it could do so much more. But when you have like blanket statements like that or just generalizations, that's where you get kind of caught up, right? Because he said billionaires like Jay-Z, Rihanna, all these other people that are rooted basically in hip hop culture, they haven't built any hospitals, haven't done any schools. But honestly, we don't know that.
But I'm gonna have to be honest, man. And I don't know if Dr. Umar is speaking from a position of just ignorance and not knowing, or if he's intentionally doing that, because that's just not true. Diddy has schools in Harlem. He has schools in New York. Like, it's not true. So Jay-Z gives scholarship money to HBCUs in large amounts, by millions of dollars he's given to schools, to HBCUs. You know what I mean? It's not advertised as much, but you can still look it up. It's still public record. Like,
right.
They are doing work, and that's just the stuff we know about.
Exactly.
You know? That's not including all the people they're employing.
Yeah.
That's not including all the people who work for Roc Nation, both the sports side of it and the music side of it. That's not including all of those people who are being employed who are black. So it's like that's discounted because he didn't open up a school. Or not a school, but he didn't open up a hospital or a. Why are you expecting a rapper to do that?
And we don't know if they haven't. That's my whole
true.
thing. It's just like we don't know who these people are, what they do behind closed doors on all fronts, including institution building.
That's a fact.
Right? And on top of that, like
that's a big assumption.
Right. And I don't like the idea of you just pointing to rap artists as the center of that, right? Like that dysfunction, as he said, or degeneracy that was like thrown in the conversation and debate as well. Like there's other artists that you need to point to too if you're gonna open that Pandora box. You know what I mean? So
and I agree, because why aren't you talking about any other genre of music? Why? It's almost like he's talking from a position of like hip hop artists are supposed to save the black community, which to me is like, because you make good music, it's your responsibility to save the world. Like it's, or you're assuming that they even have the capacity to do so. You know what I mean? So, like I said, a lot of these people are doing good things, and I think to make it seem like nobody's doing anything is crazy. I said I get it on a systemic level to say like things haven't moved forward as far as like the black ownership in America. If that's the argument, then I get where he's coming from.
Right.
We definitely have a long way to go when it comes to that. But pointing the finger and saying y'all are the reason why is crazy.
And on top of that, like he pointed to a lot of gangster rap as a source for that dismay, right? Gangster rap doesn't define hip hop. Hip hop is a whole culture. There's a whole ecosystem. And if it wasn't for the pioneers that you and I have talked about off camera, on the pod, and otherwise, like if it wasn't for them, like there wouldn't be this global export called hip hop to begin with that has opened the door for so many artistic minds to really flourish and make a living for themselves. You know what I mean? And on top of that, he also said like certain institutions aren't in place, obviously, right? In his hometown of Philly, there is an organization run by Saja Purple Blackwell. It's called How Dope Are You? She opens the door, church doors specifically, to anybody that's in the Philly area that loves hip hop. They perform on stage, and then at the end they pick one winner. They get $1,000, right? The rules of it: you can't speak or promote any gun violence related lyrics, and you can't curse, right?
Yep.
So with that in mind, while it may not be a hospital, a school system that's circulating throughout the entire country or world, it's still important. So even on the micro level, may not be macro, but it's still something that shapes a community in a positive way.
And let me tell you about the group I grew up in. Two of the groups, actually. So one being a group, I grew up in a children's performance group in Chicago called the Happiness Club. It's a hip-hop youth performance group that is free for youth to join, and they create socially conscious hip-hop songs, but for kids. So, and do full stage shows. We got to perform everywhere from the Taste of Chicago to the White House Easter egg roll, like all within my childhood. And I saw the impact that it not only had on me. I always would tell people hip hop saved my life. So if I didn't come around hip hop, I don't know what I'd be doing. Mm-hmm. So hip hop is just groups like that. There's a not for profit group that is completely surrounded by hip hop that is positively impacting Black youth. I was also a part of this group called After School Matters, which is a huge non-for-profit organization in Chicago, and they had a hip-hop program that I was a part of when in high school, and it actually pays teenagers to go to an after-school program.
Wow.
So you get a stipend to be a part of the after-school program. And they had hip-hop programs. So it's just like, bro, there's a lot of stuff going on in all these cities revolved around hip-hop that is positive. So it's like you can emphasize the negatives, but it's just kind of ignorant to just ignore all the great stuff. And all the artists who are independent now who are thriving and employing people now. So it's just, yeah. I disagree.
Yeah, I disagree.
I get his sentiment almost, but I almost entirely disagree.
Because it's not rooted in, it just seems like a very ignorant sense. There's so many things that he's missing. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? There's so many things that's missing from that debate. It didn't help. Let's talk about it. That he didn't have like someone like Dr. McCool on the opposite end of that debate who could point to those things that could speak from actual personal testimony.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Of course.
At least didn't do that.
And he did what a lot of people do in debates, which is I'm just going to yell over you. Mm-hmm. And if the person doesn't have a good, solid arguments back, and they're just like, oh, no, that's stupid, and they just yell over you the whole thing, it makes it look like you won. So, yeah, I agree. I think the person who was interviewing him just didn't have the information or didn't have enough knowledge base on hip-hop. Even when he talked about, like, when he started naming, like, different clothing brands, like, he was naming, like, old stuff like Carl Kanai. I'm like, bro, you know how many brands, like, Black-owned brands are out now that are hip-hop-centered? But I think, I agree. I think that made it a little worse.
Like I said, Dr. Umar is a Thanos of debate. Like, I've seen him crash out. And by debate standards, like, you could look at that as a L or a loss.
Yeah.
But very few. Like, I don't think he's lost a true debate, like, on the basis of, like, Pan-Africanism, Afrocentricity, and, like, just Black American-based social issues. It's hard to really get him because he's so, research, and that's kind of his domain. But when it came to this hip-hop conversation, it's clearly not something he's too familiar with.
Or just hasn't really thought critically about and has
a very narrow view,
extremely narrow view, and it's just that old view of just hip hop is bad and it's negatively impacting all the kids. Like I said, it's definitely a very, very narrow view. But like I said, because of who he was interviewing with, he definitely got the better of him in the debate for sure. It was entertaining. He was just loud and wrong.
Loud and wrong. But I will say at the end of the debate, and this is what made me feel.
Oh, you watched the whole thing?
Yeah, I watched the whole thing.
I couldn't sit through the whole thing.
Even at the end where, like, it clearly was no compromise on either side. They looked at each other in the eye and said, you know what, Dr. Umar, I love you. Yo, I love you too. And they dapped up and embraced each other. Like, because at the end of the day, we're on the same side. We want the betterment of the Black community as a whole.
100%.
You know what I mean? And so them coming to that common ground, that made me feel better about the conversation because we can have those debates, disagree, and dap up, move on.
Oh, yeah. You can yell, bark at each other, all of that, and then, it's fine. It's a debate. And sometimes those are healthy. It's healthy to get those ideas and things out there. And I'm not even mad at this conversation coming up because I think it's giving people a chance to talk about how hip hop has saved people's lives out here, man.
Right.
Like it's people who have whole careers and have fed their families based on hip hop. So I'm not talking about rappers,
right?
You know what I mean? And people who are hiring people based on what they were able to do and create in hip hop. So yeah, it's good. It's good that it's sparking this debate amongst people. So sometimes you got to crash out to be able to start some conversations. And if there's anybody who's gonna crash out,
it's gonna be Dr. Umar.
It's typically him. Yes.
Yeah, jumping up and down off the couch. I'm leaving. Like, you know what I mean? That type of stuff.
Very dramatic.
Is what I love to see as like someone that just wants that type of entertainment, bro. Because it's hilarious, bro.
And I think because both of us have more relaxed personalities, that I think when you see people act like that, it's like, oh, okay, this is real extra.
You're doing a lot.
Yeah, it's real performative.
Real performative. But he knows what he's doing. We're not gonna act like he's from Philly, so he knows what he's doing.
Oh, of course.
Absolutely. He's pandering a certain audience that's going to laugh at him, support him, whatever else, but he knows what he's doing. He's incredible. One thing that they can't say about someone like a Dr. Umar or someone else that's relatively in that space, can't say they are dumb. Intelligent, very intelligent person.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
But they can say that school ain't open yet. But that's another story.
You can't say that.
We're not
all
going
right.
We're not even going. But the building was bought, though. I have seen it in person in Delaware. I have drove by it. So there's a building there. But
let's get into this Days Before Rodeo. Listen, man.